When Vito told Kevin that he could no longer afford to save Williams Media, Kevin knocked him out with a kick to the chest, then turned his attention to the other guests in the room. When Kevin ordered them to get down on their knees, Nick Archer and Doug Butler objected and warned him against doing anything that would incur the wrath of prominent names such as New York's Quinn family, as well as Chicago's Archer, Butler, and Warren families. Do you think that scares me, Doug Butler? Let's see which of us will be standing after tonight. Kevin suddenly rushed toward Doug Butler and slapped him hard in the face. With a loud thud, Doug Butler landed hard on the floor by the door. His left cheek turned red and swollen, and he was too dazed to stand up. I still remember how you tried to go after my wife at the new Halsted Street Mall. Back then, I may have put you in your place with just a few words, but that doesn't mean I always play nice. Kevin walked towards Doug and grabbed him by the neck, then casually threw him across the room as if he were a trash bag. Nick Archer was stunned. Kevin, do you really dare to attack us all? The Archer family won't take kindly to this. Well, in your case, I won't dare to make a move as simple as that. Kevin stared at him coldly and continued. You said you're from the Archer family, didn't you? By any chance, are you also related to Dominic and Gwen Archer? It's good that you know my brother and sister's names. Given our family's reputation, I advise you to politely step aside and let me leave. Otherwise, I'll definitely teach you a lesson tonight, Nick said with confidence. Then I'll take a good look at you tonight. Let's see how you compare with your siblings. Kevin then kicked Nick in the chest, sending him a few feet away. Unlike his older siblings, Nick was just a spoiled and entitled slacker who spent most of his time drinking and fooling around. He was used to getting whatever he wanted because of his family name, and he'd never experienced a beating like this in his entire life. So, are you two going to kneel before me or not? Kevin coldly asked as he looked down at the two injured men. That's never going to happen, so you better kill me tonight. Otherwise, if I manage to leave this place alive, I'll definitely hunt you down and kill you. Doug Butler gritted his teeth and shouted. You want to play the tough guy, huh? All right then, have it your way. Kevin walked up to Doug with a sneer. He then raised his foot and stepped on Doug's knee. Son of a bitch! A crisp sound echoed throughout the room as Doug suddenly let out a miserable cry. Kevin had actually fractured his patella with a single stomp. You better kneel down now and show some respect to me, Kevin said coldly. Screw you, Kevin. If you have the guts, I'll dare you to kill me immediately. Limping on one leg, Doug suddenly threw himself at Kevin like a mad dog. You don't know what death is. Be careful what you wish for. Kevin shook his head as he stepped aside to avoid Doug's attack. Then he spun him around and drove his knee into Doug's back. Since the door had been left open, the fight in the private room attracted the attention of a lot of people who were passing by. Those who recognized Kevin were stunned by his cruelty. They couldn't help but think to themselves, is this really the useless son-in-law of the Jones family? Are you going to kneel down or not? This is your last chance, Kevin asked again. I'd rather die than kneel down to you. Doug Butler struggled to get up with all his strength, but he just couldn't. All right, I'll see you in the next life then. Kevin grabbed Doug by his hair and dragged him towards the window. Then he lifted him up and hung him outside the window. The private room was located on the 5th floor of the Salix Leaf Hotel. From that height, even if Doug didn't die from the fall, he would still be disabled for the rest of his life. Kevin, Mr. Williams, please let me go. I beg of you. I don't want to die yet. I'm sorry if I ever offended you. I won't ever dare to have any ideas about Lily anymore. Doug grabbed Kevin's arms tensely as he trembled in fear. Then, are you going to kneel down or not? A smile slowly emerged on Kevin's face, making the others who were watching feel a cold chill run down their spines. Seeing that Doug Butler didn't immediately answer, Kevin hung his body even further out the window. Okay, I'll kneel down, just please pull me back in. Doug Butler finally couldn't help but cry out. He was only in his late 20s and didn't want to die so young. Prove it. Kneel down. Kevin dragged Doug back inside and threw him on the floor. Doug's face was pale. As he slowly positioned himself to kneel down in front of Kevin, he gritted his teeth to resist the pain in his leg. "That's a good Dougie," Kevin teased as he patted Doug's head. "See, wasn't that easy?" Like a dog with its tail between its legs, Doug felt utterly ashamed when he heard those words. In an instant, he lost all his dignity to Kevin. Next, Kevin then turned his attention to Jacob Warren and Harvey Quinn. "Why aren't the two of you kneeling down yet?" "Over my dead body," Jacob charged madly at Kevin. He knew that he wouldn't be able to escape if he didn't put his life on the line tonight, but how could his strength match up to Kevin's? Jacob suddenly fell down on his knees after receiving a foot to the groin. His face turned pale from the blow. As he gritted his teeth, he tried his best not to make any sound. Kevin looked at Jacob with disdain. "Let me give you a piece of advice. If you don't have the strength to go up against someone, you better not fool around. Otherwise, you might end up losing your life one day." Kevin then shifted his gaze to Harvey. "You better not mess around with me. If you even dare to touch a hair on my head, I'm sure my father will kill you when he finds out." Harvey was clearly frightened by Kevin's ruthless strength. "Besides, I haven't said a single insulting thing to you since we got here. If you let me go, I'll immediately withdraw the Quinn's family clampdown on Williams Media as a sign of good faith." Harvey knew that he had to take a different approach from his peers, so he tried to get in Kevin's good graces. He would then think of a way to have his revenge once he managed to safely return to New York. "I know that you haven't insulted me, and that's the reason why you're still standing right now. But no matter what happens, you'll have to come over now and kneel down before I let you say another word." Kevin didn't care about him at all. "What good will it do me if I do everything you want tonight?" Harvey tried his best to control his anger. "What did I just say? Come over and kneel down. Only then can you speak to me any further. Didn't you hear me?" Kevin no longer had the patience to be polite with Harvey. "Don't push your luck." Before Harvey could finish speaking, Kevin suddenly kicked him to the ground and then slapped him hard on the face. "You still don't get it, do you? Your empty promises won't work on me. I can see right through your act. Besides, even if the Quinn family really hates my guts, they would never dare to go against me." Kevin spat in Harvey's face. "Now kneel down over there for me." Harvey was annoyed. You don't want to return to New York with a broken leg, do you?" Kevin interrupted Harvey before he could say anything. Thinking of what just had happened to Doug Butler, Harvey took a deep breath and slowly opened his mouth. All right, I'll kneel." As soon as Harvey knelt down, Kevin's gaze shifted back towards Nick. "You'd better not pretend to be unconscious, otherwise I'll make sure you never wake up for real." Kevin knew Nick's limits very well. He didn't have to hit him again in order to knock some sense into him. As soon as Nick heard Kevin, he instantly opened his eyes. He no longer had his previous arrogance as he immediately walked over to Jacob and knelt down beside him. The onlookers outside the door all looked at Kevin in awe. In less than 10 minutes, all 4 of these prominent guests were forcefully humbled by Kevin as they obediently knelt on the ground without resistance. "Kevin, you stirred up such a huge mess. No one can save you now." Vito, who had just woken up, leaned himself against the wall and shouted at Kevin with hatred. "Vito, it's good that you're awake now. You know, aside from our little spat at the banquet last time, we don't really have any other issues with one another. Why do we need to do this? Isn't it better to make peace with our enemies than to get rid of them?" Kevin pulled a chair over and sat down next to him. "Kevin, aren't you being kind of arrogant? As for what you just said, we'll never be friends. Williams Media will crash and burn to the ground in no time, so admit your defeat now and I might just spare your life. Otherwise, I'll make sure you'll be reduced to ashes along with your precious company." Vito ferociously growled. Kevin simply shook his head. A second later, he grabbed Vito by his shoulders and gave him a strong knee to the stomach. The gut-wrenching pain caused Vito to curl up in a ball on the ground. Then Kevin brushed some dust off his shoulder and let out a deep sigh. "Now that everyone here has been dealt with and put in their place, can we all go home?" Nick fearfully asked. "Nonsense. Why should I end this so soon? Didn't I tell everyone that we were going to play a game tonight? "We're just getting started." Kevin replied without a shred of worry. The onlookers suddenly became restless. What did Kevin have in mind for everyone else? Suddenly, more than 10 people walked in the room, led by Rachel and Mitchell Cook. When he saw them, Doug instantly became arrogant once again. "Rachel, quickly find someone to arrest this piece of trash. Look at all the trouble he's caused at the Salix Leaf Hotel tonight." "Mr. Cook, you came just in time. We were just having dinner when this man showed up uninvited. Not only did he beat up all these people, he even broke one of Doug's legs and made these poor gentlemen kneel down in front of him. You have to help us." Vito Booker's eyes lit up. He was expecting to see Kevin get punished, but Vito was in for a big surprise. Doug Butler, Jacob Warren, Harvey Quinn, and Nick Archer were all eventually humbled by Kevin as they knelt down before him. After Vito Booker woke up from his unconscious state, Kevin gave him one last chance to back down against Williams Media. However, when Vito refused, Kevin responded by giving him a knee to the gut, then revealed that he was just getting started with everyone. Just then, Mitchell, Cook, and Rachel arrived. When this happened, Vito and Doug began to get arrogant again, complaining about Kevin and all the trouble that he was causing. "My God, how much trouble did that useless son-in-law get himself into? Looks like the tables have been turned on him," one of the women remarked. "How dare he beat up all these people, thinking that there wouldn't be any consequences. He'll probably get arrested now," the person beside her added. "He'd be lucky if he were only arrested. Do you know who Mitchell, Cook, and Rachel are? Now that they're here, that piece of trash will surely disappear without a trace," another one warned. Just then, another dozen people rushed upstairs and entered the private room. When they saw that, the crowd outside the door got excited. Some of them even had the urge to enter the room just so they could watch up close. "Damn, that's Adriana Wright from the West Chicago International Company, and Emo Squire from that big bodyguard company. Looks like a big show is going to happen tonight. This is going to be fun to watch." "Miss Wright, come and save me. Please make sure that piece of trash dies for what he did to me." Doug Butler struggled to get up from the floor as he tried to limp over to her. "Mr. Squire, the Warren family is a big client of your company. If you kill this man tonight, my father will certainly reward you." Jacob Warren revealed a smile as he also stood up. His ugly crying had turned into tears of joy. Seeing these people stand up from the floor, Kevin's eyes flashed with a brutal coldness. "Did I tell anyone that they could get up?" "Kevin, I can't believe you're still so arrogant, even in the face of certain death. Do you know who those people are standing in front of you?" It was as if Vito Booker had just taken some kind of herbal pill. His whole body suddenly became energetic. "It's time we teach you a lesson for making us kneel down so uncomfortably. Why don't I break your legs right now?" Nick sneered. "Breaking his legs isn't enough. Strip his clothes off him and throw his body into the Chicago River. That way he'll drown a miserable death." Jacob confidently scowled. "Well, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and make him pay," Doug ordered. Rachel and the others smiled knowingly to each other when they heard him. Then they quietly walked over towards Kevin and lined up in front of him. "Good evening, Mr. Williams," they all greeted him. "How you doing, boss?" Rachel added. Time seemed to have stopped in the room as Doug and the others' proud smiles were replaced by frozen shock on their faces. Vito, who had his arms outstretched for Cook to help him up, was simply left hanging. The crowd gasped. "Oh my God, did Rachel just call him boss? What a plot twist." Vito Booker looked at Cook with confusion and asked, "Mr. Cook, do you know this piece of trash?" "Of course. You probably don't know it, Vito, but none of us would be standing here today in powerful positions without the help of our friend and colleague, Mr. Williams. We owe him our loyalty," Cook explained with a serious look on his face. Ever since Cook and the others had been given the power pill and started training, they all began to experience changes in their bodies and felt much stronger than before. Now they were no longer afraid to fight all these arrogant men themselves if they had to. When Vito heard this, he stared blankly at Kevin as he helplessly sat on the ground. And without uttering a word, Nick, Harvey, Jacob, and Doug immediately knelt down on the floor once again. "I didn't ask you to kneel again, did I?" Kevin asked with a playful smile. "It's all right. We prefer to kneel if that's okay with you. It's more comfortable than standing up the whole time," Jacob replied with an anxious smile. Something about Kevin confounded him. If Kevin could financially support Cook and the others with ease, then why was he pretending to just be the useless son-in-law of the Jones family? Why was he willing to endure all that public ridicule when he had so much power and wealth at his disposal? Did Kevin simply want to experience life as a lowlife? And if that was the case, why did it seem like he was too good at playing this role? As much fun as this has been, I don't want to waste my time talking to you guys anymore. Didn't you guys ask me how this was all going to end tonight? Well, this is your chance to leave the room. Take out your phones and contact the person in your family who you deem the most capable. I'd like to have a conversation with each of them. Kevin crossed his legs and said calmly. Kevin knew that Jacob and the others were just a couple of rich, spoiled brats who didn't have the power to make any decisions. In order to solve the crisis at Williams Media, he had to draw out the heads of their families. "Is this the person you're looking for?" Harvey nervously asked as he showed him a contact on his phone. "That's exactly who I was referring to." Kevin nodded in approval as he gestured for Cook and the others to settle down. About 10 minutes later, news of what happened at the Salix Leaf Hotel spread all across Chicago. Everyone was shocked by how the situation was unfolding. How could the useless son-in-law of the Jones family have the upper hand against the prominent Quinn, Warren, Archer, and Butler families? Back in the private room, Kevin's phone suddenly rang. "Guess who just called me?" Kevin sneered and swept his gaze across these people. He slowly counted up to 3 before answering the call. "Mr. Williams, this is Philip Quinn. We've met before." A deep voice came from the other end of the line. "Mr. Quinn, how have you been?" "I'm here right now with your son. He says that the Quinn family is looking forward to seeing the downfall of my company, Williams Media. Is that true?" Kevin asked with a cold smile as he looked at Harvey kneeling on the floor with his head hanging in shame. "Mr. Williams, don't listen to my son. Harvey's just a spoiled child who doesn't know any better. His arrogance doesn't represent the values of the Quinn family at all," Philip replied indifferently. "I knew you were a man with good sense, unlike your immature son over here. So what will we do about my company then?" Kevin didn't want to let this matter rest until he got what he wanted. "Thank you for your kind words, Mr. Williams. I certainly consider you to be a dear friend of the Quinn family, so allow me to apologize on behalf of my son. That being said, I hope you can send him back to New York now. Besides, hasn't he already gotten the lesson he deserved?" Philip's tone remained unchanged. "As for Williams Media, I believe that it's a company with good prospects, so I've decided to invest $1 billion in your company. I'd like for us to collaborate on a project soon, Mr. Williams." "Thank you. This will surely be a great business opportunity for the both of us. As for your son, Chicago hasn't been too safe lately. I'm worried that he might not be in great physical condition when he leaves the Salix Leaf Hotel this evening," Kevin cautioned with some hidden meaning in his words. "Don't worry about that, Mr. Williams. The person I've sent to pick him up should be on his way there. Anyway, when I have more time, I'll definitely drop by Williams Media to visit you," Philip said politely. "I shall look forward to that then." Kevin hung up the phone with a smile. Everyone inside and outside the private room was staring in disbelief at Kevin. Who hadn't heard of New York's Philip Quinn? How could such a powerful and terrifying figure be so respectful to Kevin? "Harvey, it looks like you're safe now thanks to your father. Now just keep kneeling down and wait for my signal. Someone will come and pick you up soon," Kevin informed him casually. Upon hearing this, Harvey heaved a huge sigh of relief. He overheard their conversation because Kevin had turned on the loudspeaker of his phone. And for more than 20 years, Harvey had never seen or heard his father treat anyone with such respect. So the fact that Philip had just invested a huge sum of money in a struggling business without any hesitation meant that Kevin was really someone to be feared. How could he have been so disrespectful to him earlier? He truly could have died at his hands tonight. At the same time, Cook and the others also finally managed to relax a little. Out of everyone who had been beaten up by Kevin that evening, the one that they were most worried about was Harvey. After all, the strength of the Quinn family couldn't be underestimated. Now that Philip had personally called to plead for mercy, their worries were all gone. Moreover, they developed an even greater respect for Kevin. Meanwhile, Kevin was smiling to himself. The fact that Harvey had been causing so much trouble here tonight was just icing on the cake. When he found out from Cook and the others that the Quinn family was behind all of this, he was confident that he could convince Philip to reinvest in his company. So even prior to his arrival at the Salix Leaf Hotel, Kevin had actually been the one to call Philip. The content of their brief conversation was very simple. Kevin had 3 power pills in his possession. Next, Kevin had to deal with the other troublemakers. In order to escape, Kevin told Harvey, Doug, Jacob, and Nick that he wanted to speak with each family's decision-maker. Philip Quinn then called Kevin to apologize on behalf of Harvey, and then he invested $1 billion in Williams Media. While everyone wondered why such a powerful and terrifying figure was so respectful towards Kevin, the latter simply smiled. Prior to that night's events, Kevin found out about the Quinn family's involvement in Vito's plot against Williams Media. He then called Philip to share that he had 3 power pills in his possession. Kevin knew that a man like Philip Quinn wouldn't be able to resist the temptation of the power pill. After all, Philip had already spent billions in the past just to have some. After their call ended, time passed by slowly. Other than Philip, no one else had contacted Kevin. As a result, he started to get impatient from all the waiting. Kevin slammed his phone on the table and stood up. His eyes swept across the remaining men. "Will you look at the time? I guess none of your relatives care about what happens to you." What do you want?" Doug Butler gulped. The way Kevin looked at him made him feel a chill in his heart. "Since people don't seem to believe that I would end your lives, it's time I make an example out of someone, right?" Kevin suddenly grabbed Doug's shirt and dragged him to the window. "What a beautiful view! Doug, why don't you stand up on that ledge for me?" Kevin said with a straight face as he looked outside. Doug Butler endured the pain in his leg and stood up. "What's this for?" "That's good, Dougie. Now on the count of 3, I want you to jump out, okay?" Kevin instructed. You must be joking." As Doug looked down, the distance between the 5th floor and the sidewalk made him dizzy. His face suddenly turned as white as a sheet of paper. Kevin smiled and patted Doug's shoulder. "Since no one has called me on your behalf, this is your only chance to escape. Besides, we're only on the 5th floor. You might have a chance to survive if you jump. But if you stay inside this room, you'll certainly die." "Kevin, I beg you, I already have 1 broken leg. Is there really no other way we can help each other? I don't want to die," Doug pleaded as he tightly held onto the sides of the window. "Are you sure you don't want to jump?" Kevin's face turned cold. Doug Butler's legs started to tremble. "Kevin, please don't do this. Have mercy on me." I know it can be scary to take a leap of faith, but sometimes all it takes is a little push. Kevin narrowed his eyes and gave Doug a shove in his back. Doug closed his eyes and screamed like hell to everyone's horror. However, when he opened his eyes, he was still alive. Instead of crashing straight to the ground, he fell right onto the back of a garbage truck. Covered in piles of trash and human waste, Doug wasn't sure whether he would have preferred to die instead as he passed out from nausea. Kevin didn't actually have any plans to kill Doug. As part owner of the Salix Leaf Hotel, he'd taken a particular interest in the hotel's operations, including the time when its garbage was usually collected. So when he checked his phone and saw the time earlier, he saw this as a good opportunity to prove a point. Luckily, the garbage truck was parked right in front of the hotel when he looked out the window. Mitchell Cook sighed and shook his head a few times. Kevin had sent him a text just minutes prior about his plan. Still, it was quite risky to pull off, so he only relaxed after Kevin subtly touched the back of his ear. This was his secret signal to indicate that Doug was still alive. Since none of the people in the room or those watching from outside knew about this, they all feared for the worst and fell silent. In their eyes, they couldn't believe Kevin was actually capable of committing such a heinous act. Now it was Cook's turn to play his part in this little show.
"What are you all still standing there for? Hurry up and check on Doug Butler. Call an ambulance,"
Cook shouted at the bodyguards who followed him and left. Who wants to go next? Jacob? Nick? Kevin wrung his hands and asked casually.
"Kevin, stop this nonsense. If you continue, the cops won't have a choice but to end your life as soon as you're caught."
Vito wanted to escape from Kevin so badly. If there's someone here who the cops should deal with, shouldn't it be you? After all, weren't you the one who underhandedly sabotaged my company? Kevin sneered.
"I don't know what you mean,"
Vito vehemently denied. On the way to the Salix Leaf Hotel, Kevin's investigation team found out why so many artists had suddenly left Williams Media so quickly. In a span of 2 days, Vito had tracked down his artists' families and used physical coercion to poach them. Kevin returned to his chair and sat down. "I'll give you guys another half an hour. If none of your families contact me by then I guess you've dug your own graves." The private room returned to silence again as Kevin poured himself a glass of wine. He could see Jacob and Nick desperately trying to contact their families on their phones. Half an hour later, Kevin's phone suddenly rang. As soon as he answered the call, he turned on his speaker once again. "Who is this?" Kevin asked without any hesitation.
"This is Ronald Campbell. Let Vito Booker go."
An extremely low voice could be heard on the phone. Everyone could hear that this person was trying his best to suppress his anger. "Who? I've never heard of you. And why are you telling me what to do? I'm the one in charge here." Kevin was amused by Campbell's demand. While Kevin was unaware of this man's identity, everyone else clearly knew who he was. The onlookers watching from outside couldn't believe it. "Ronald Campbell? That's one of the 6 most powerful people in Chicago," an onlooker remarked. "The Food and Drug Administration Commissioner? Looks like this useless son-in-law has really screwed himself this time," another sneered. By now, Cook had returned and was also surprised by the phone call. While Vito hadn't had the chance to contact anyone, it seemed the word had somehow gotten to Ronald Campbell about this. How were the two of them connected?
"Kevin, don't do anything you'll regret, or you won't know what's coming. I'm warning you. Hurry up and let them go."
Campbell was obviously losing his patience at this point. "What you said was quite amusing. I'm so scared now." After Kevin sarcastically laughed, his tone suddenly became serious. "Why should I listen to you?"
"You don't know who you're messing with, Mr. Williams. I'm one of the most powerful men in Chicago, and I have a lot of connections in the government," Campbell warned.
"So what? Look, if Vito Booker is your son or grandson, we can keep talking. I'll even do you a favor and let him go. But tell me, why do you insist on getting involved in this mess? What exactly does he have to do with you? Why should I be afraid of you?" After Kevin finished speaking, not only did he hang up on Campbell, but he also permanently blocked the number. Kevin didn't care who Campbell was or how powerful he was. He had his own plans to seize control of Chicago and had already laid some groundwork for it in secret. In less than 2 minutes, his phone rang again. Thinking it was still Campbell, Kevin immediately rejected the call, but his phone kept ringing as if it was going to explode. Suddenly, Cook's phone rang. Shortly after answering the call, he handed his phone over to Kevin.
"It's Dominic Archer. He said that he called me because he couldn't get through to your phone just now."
"I'm hanging up." Kevin didn't want to talk to him at all. "Tell him that if he wants to get his brother, he has to come here in person. He can't just phone it in. Dominic doesn't hold a candle to me." Hearing this, Nick's face was instantly filled with both bitterness and shock. Everyone inside and outside the room gulped in surprise when they heard this as well. They knew who Dominic Archer was. He was one of Chicago's top crime lords. If Campbell's position was respected because he was a presidential appointee, then Dominic Archer was purely relying on strength and violence to strike fear in people. So for a moment, everyone felt that Kevin had gone crazy. There were only a few people in Chicago who dared to go up against him. "We'd better get out of this place now. If we wait for Dominic Archer to come, we won't be able to leave even if we wanted to," one of the onlookers warned. Nick, who was still kneeling on the ground, turned deathly pale. He seemed to have sensed Dominic Archer's monstrous fury. Even if he made it out alive tonight, he knew that he would also have to face his own brother's wrath for putting him in this position.
"Losing Williams Media should be the least of your worries at this point. Now that you've offended Dominic Archer, you won't be able to save your life either,"
Vito laughed maliciously. "If you dare to laugh at me like that again, I'll cut out your tongue." Kevin glanced at him sharply. Vito Booker's smile suddenly turned into anger.
"Kevin, stop pretending to be so powerful. Do you even know who Dominic Archer is? I have a deep relationship with him. If you kneel down right now and beg for mercy, then call Brittany Davis over to accompany me immediately, maybe I can ask Mr. Archer to grant you a quick death."
Just as he finished talking, Vito suddenly let out a loud cry as Kevin had given him another forceful knee to his stomach. "From here on out, I'll start breaking your ribs one by one for every word that comes out of your mouth," Kevin said with a cold face as he looked across the room. "This goes for everyone." This time, Vito really shut his mouth as he silently winced from the intense pain. Just then, Kevin's phone suddenly rang again. Everyone in the room couldn't help but get nervous. The people who were calling Kevin were getting more and more terrifying. And while the others had underestimated Kevin in the past, this time it was different. For those who have only heard about his performance in the martial arts competition, they now understood why Kevin was someone to be feared after seeing him up close. And with Nick, Vito, and Jacob's lives still hanging in the balance, it seemed that he was no longer a useless son-in-law in their eyes. "Who do you think is the next caller?" Kevin didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked the others with a playful smile. At this point, he'd already rejected both Ronald Campbell and Dominic Archer. So everyone looked over at Jacob. Only the Warren family hadn't made a call yet. Kevin finally answered the phone. "This is Kevin. Who are you?" The person on the other end of the phone didn't hesitate to reply.
"This is Andrew Warren."
Kevin slightly frowned, as if he wasn't satisfied by his answer. The person's voice didn't sound too convincing.
"Andrew Warren is one of the most highly respected people in Chicago. There's a 90% chance that he'll be the next head of the Warren family,"
Cook informed him in a low voice. "The next head?" Kevin teased casually. He felt slightly insulted by this.
"I'm calling you on behalf of the Warren family. Now let my son go. If you don't, I'm afraid you won't be able to bear the consequences."
Andrew tried his best to lower his voice as he spoke. "So you're Jacob's father, huh? Well, that doesn't really hold any weight with me," Kevin replied faintly. "And don't you dare talk about representing the Warren family. You're just a potential successor, so don't call me again until you become the true head of your family." Before Andrew could retort, Kevin hung up the phone. "Jacob, does your family think too lowly of you, or is it because your grandfather doesn't respect me enough?" Kevin's face suddenly had a vicious look. "Since he thinks that he's more important than your life, I think you should say hello to Doug." Hearing this, Jacob's face instantly turned pale. He fell to the floor on all fours, trembling and crawling backwards. Suddenly, Cook picked up the phone.
"There's news from the hospital. Although Doug is out of danger, the doctors don't know when he'll wake up."
Of course, Cook had exaggerated that last part. In truth, Doug was sleeping like a baby after having knee surgery. However, since Jacob was unaware of this, his heart couldn't take it any longer. After letting out a strange wail, he suddenly peed his pants and fainted. Suddenly, Kevin's phone rang again. Who is it this time?
This is Daniel Warren. Mr. Williams, I believe you wanted me to personally make this call.
An older voice could be heard throughout the room. What can I do for you, Mr. Warren? Kevin asked.
I'm sure you already know why I'm calling. To be fair, I really didn't expect the useless son-in-law of the Jones family to be related to the Williams family of New York, and would also be the CEO of Williams Media.
Daniel's voice was calm. Kevin didn't find this strange at all. While his identity was actually very easy to investigate, most people wouldn't have bothered to check after dismissing him for his status in the Jones family. You didn't call me just to tell me that, did you? Kevin pretended to be confused and asked.
Of course not. I just wanted to acknowledge your impressive background, but so what? That's all in the past now. The Williams family has already chased you out, and Williams Media is about to close down. You'll just go back to being a useless son-in-law in no time, so while you still have some dignity left, it's best to release my grandson immediately. In exchange, my family can provide you with a job as a janitor at one of our properties so that you won't have to scrape by in the future.
Daniel's words were filled with disdain. Looks like everyone in the Warren family speaks in the same tone. Do I need to thank you for your kind offer? Kevin coldly replied as he stared at Jacob, who was lying on the floor unconscious. Mr. Warren, your grandson just peed himself and fainted in front of everyone. If you dare to speak to me like this again, I won't hesitate to toss him out the window. Unfortunately, I can't guarantee that he'll have Doug's luck.
What do you want, Mr. Williams?
Daniel suddenly showed a slight panic in his voice. Shouldn't a person need to apologize for doing something wrong? Kevin smiled and added, an older person like you should be full of wisdom. You don't need me to teach you such a small thing.
Dream on, Kevin. You're just a useless son-in-law of the Jones family. What right do you have to demand my apology?
Daniel grumbled in anger. I'll give you 5 seconds to think it over. Otherwise, your family should be prepared to make some funeral arrangements. Kevin didn't want to waste any more time. His patience had worn thin.
All right, just don't hurt Jacob, Daniel pleaded. Mr. Williams, on behalf of the Warren family, I sincerely apologize to you. At the same time, we'll no longer go after Williams Media.
Daniel's words were filled with bitterness. It took a lot to swallow his pride, but at the same time, he just couldn't bear the thought of burying his favorite grandson. The question was, would Kevin accept his apology? Who would have thought that a useless loser of a son-in-law that everyone practically spat on would actually make the famous Warren family give in to him? It was a lot like when they got the Chicago River to flow west to the Mississippi instead of east to Lake Michigan. I accept your apology. Send someone to the Salix Leaf Hotel to pick up your grandson and bring him back. After he said this, Kevin made a light humph sound to show his disdain. Kevin's display of contempt made Daniel Warren's temper flare. How could someone who was beneath him dare to show such scorn? He was so upset that he fainted. Kevin could hear the panic sounds of the Warren family members. He smiled and hung up the phone. The whole place fell silent. After seeing this, nobody would dare to call Kevin worthless trash anymore. Word of Kevin's actions would definitely spread across the whole city of Chicago. He was certainly making a name for himself. Suddenly, a burst of noisy and hurried footsteps could be heard coming from the stairwell. The crowd outside the door headed quickly toward Kevin. At least a dozen tall and powerful-looking men walked into the private room. They all exuded what could only be called an evil aura. Anyone could tell they ran with a rough crowd, and you could see bulges under their shirts and inside their jackets. They were obviously armed to the teeth. Even Mitchell Cook took notice when he saw the man who was leading the group. I guess you have to be careful when you're out this late at night. Look how many men you brought with you, Are you afraid you'll have to fight off all the ladies who won't be able to restrain themselves when they see your handsome face?" Kevin teased without showing the slightest bit of nervousness. The other people in the room couldn't believe Kevin was talking to Dominic Archer like this. Kevin was really tempting fate, no matter how well he could fight. They started whispering to each other. "He's done for. I think they're going to kill him and toss him in the lake."
"Ha, Kevin, you're going to die this time. Now that Dominic Archer is here, you can't run away even if you want to."
Vito Booker endured his pain as he laughed proudly.
"Mr. Archer, you gotta kill this scumbag for me."
Nick Archer, who was still lying on the floor, was happy to see this and his eyes lit up.
"Bro, come and save me. Break that bastard's legs and cut him to pieces."
Nick Archer and Vito Booker suddenly became very aggressive. If it wasn't for their injuries, they would have stood up and gotten in Kevin's face themselves. But they were in no condition to do that. But Dominic ignored the two of them, acting like they weren't even there. He gestured to his men to stay back as he walked up to Kevin alone.
"Long time no see."
Dominic calmly pulled up a chair and sat down beside him. "Looks like you've made an enormous leap in your training," Kevin said with a faint smile.
"And I have to thank you for that power pill of yours."
Dominic patted Kevin on the shoulder and said with a smile. He never even looked at Nick Archer. The onlookers were absolutely dumbfounded by what they were seeing. How come Kevin wasn't lying on the floor in a pool of blood? Why were the two of them acting so casual? They were like two old friends who hadn't seen each other in a long time, sitting down to have a chat over a cup of coffee. Vito and Nick Archer, who were also watching this, were completely stunned. They just sat there on the floor, unable to recover from their shock.
"So, is everything you told me on the phone true?"
Dominic's expression suddenly became very serious. "It's absolutely true. The auction will be held at the Williams Company offices tomorrow at 10 a.m. Kevin looked at him with a big grin. Before he went to the Salix Leaf Hotel, he asked Miss Wilson to send an invitation to all the most prominent business people of Chicago. The next morning at 10 a.m., Williams Media was going to put up 100 power pills for auction. Kevin wasn't concerned that Dominic would be tempted by it, though.
"There's one thing I want to know, Kevin. Since you actually own Williams Media, why did you ever bother marrying into the Jones family and put up with all their abuse?"
Dominic asked in a strange tone of voice. Then he continued,
"Since this little misunderstanding has finally been cleared up, I can assure you that starting tomorrow morning, the Archer family will definitely stop its corporate warfare with Williams Media, and you'll be compensated for the losses your company suffered over the past few days."
When he finished speaking, Dominic turned around and glared at his brother Nick, who was still lying on the floor.
"What are you waiting for? Get over here and apologize to Mr. Williams."
As soon as he heard that, Nick ignored the pain in his knees and dragged himself over to Kevin.
"Mr. Williams, I'm so sorry."
"Let's hope this matter is settled now."
Dominic looked Kevin in the eyes and gave him a little nod. He really felt that Kevin was a genius, and it would be worth it to make friends with him. What Kevin had managed to accomplish was astonishing, especially while camouflaging himself as the loser son-in-law of the Jones family. Kevin's ability to develop himself through his herbal medicine was simply astounding. As he sat across from him, Dominic could feel the intense and seemingly limitless power that Kevin now possessed. The other thing that Dominic was aware of was Kevin's knowledge of so many formulas to create herbal meds. How many pill formulas did Kevin, who had been declared the champion of the pill refinement contest, actually know? Who could say for sure? "You came here to personally rescue the man. What else can I say? Go ahead and take him. But just remember one thing. This isn't the first time your family has provoked me. Don't pull another stunt like this ever again," Kevin advised him flatly.
"I've got no problem with that."
Dominic stood up, straightened out his clothes, and left the Salix Leaf Hotel with his men. Waiting for Harvey Quinn and Jacob Warren to be picked up took a long time, and things got a little dull. They both continued to kneel on the floor, fighting to stay awake. Whenever they dozed off or started to slump, Kevin would give them a slap. The onlookers got excited when they finally saw the Quinn family rush in after their long trip from New York City. Mr. Williams, I'm sorry to bother you. Philip Quinn's cousin Peter Quinn was very sincere. When he saw the palm print on Harvey Quinn's face, you could see the anger flash in his eyes, but he didn't dare express it to Kevin. Take him back and make sure that he's learned his lesson. President Quinn and I are good friends. I don't want to spoil my relationship with him just because of his son. Chicago can be a dangerous place. Don't let him wander around all alone in the future. He might get hurt. Kevin patted Harvey Quinn on the head and he warned him to behave himself. He was treating him like a little kid who'd been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. The Warren family hadn't arrived yet, but after chatting with Kevin for a while, the Quinns took Harvey and Jacob away together. Mr. Booker, can you do it or not? Everyone else has already been set free. Did you come out to protect them tonight or not? Just don't waste any more of my time. I still have to prepare the medicinal pills for tomorrow's auction, Kevin announced as he stretched lazily. Vito Booker was extremely terrified and didn't know how to respond. His lips moved, but he couldn't speak. This was mainly because of Kevin's pill. The effect of the pill was like a giant, invisible hand. With all the commotion in the Salix Leaf Hotel, no one had come to face Kevin yet. Even the police didn't send anyone to check on him. If this doesn't work out, you might as well just head over to the hospital with Doug Butler. Kevin had reached the limits of his patience.
No, wait a little longer. Someone will come for me.
Vito sobbed as he pleaded with Kevin. He was beginning to deeply regret what he'd done. Why had he provoked Kevin in the first place? If only he'd accepted his last defeat, none of this would have happened. Actually, you still have a bargaining chip in your hand to negotiate with me. It's just that you never thought of it, Kevin said with a mocking smile. Mitchell Cook and the others all smiled when he said that. Rachel and Adriana thought that Kevin was being kind of rough on him. Not only could he defeat someone in a fight, but he could also hit them in the wallet.
You want the Booker Phoenix Corporation, don't you?
Vito suddenly understood what Kevin was getting at. You dope. What else could I possibly be talking about? Kevin impatiently took out his phone and dialed Brittany Davis's number. When the call connected, he said, "Bring it up now." Moments later, Brittany ran in and placed a contract in front of Vito Booker. "Director Booker, please sign here," Brittany said with a smile. They all watched, wondering if Vito would actually hand over his company. When Brittany Davis came in and placed the contract in front of Vito Booker, everyone held their breath, wondering if he would sign over possession of the Booker Phoenix Corporation. You never know how someone will react. Vito had always wanted to possess Brittany Davis, but right now, when he looked at her smile, his heart was filled with nothing but bitterness.
No, I won't sign it. I definitely won't.
Before Vito even finished speaking, he saw Kevin, who had been sitting patiently in his chair, start clenching his fists. Kevin got up and slowly walked to the window, then he turned and sneered at Vito. "There are some things you need to think about first." Kevin lightly tapped on the windowsill. Everyone there understood what he meant. 1 or 2 hours earlier, Kevin had thrown Doug Butler out of the very same window.
I'll sign.
Vito figured that saving his own life was worth more than keeping the Booker Phoenix Corporation. That's more like it. Living really is more important than anything else. Kevin smiled and clapped his hands together. He glanced at the contents of the contract. It was a basic business agreement. The most important thing was that all the shares and assets of the Booker Phoenix Corporation were to be transferred unconditionally to the president of Williams Media. Vito gritted his teeth and gripped the pen tightly in his hand. The Booker Phoenix Corporation had been in his family for 3 generations, but in order to walk out of there alive, he had no other choice. When he finished writing his name, Vito seemed to have lost all his strength. He sat on the floor in a daze. "Thank you for cooperating, Mr. Booker." Kevin looked at the contract and then walked over to Vito Booker. He patted him on the head like he was petting a dog. When that was over, he took Mitchell Cook and the others, and they all left the Salix Leaf Hotel. "Kevin, you really amazed us. We thought you really—" Adriana didn't finish her words. "Let's not talk about the past anymore. Just remember to be there on time tomorrow morning. Williams Media has suffered enormous losses. We need some help restoring our reputation." Kevin's reaction was very calm, even though the situation was dire.
"Don't worry, Kevin, we'll definitely be there," Cook replied with a smile.
"It's getting late. Everybody get some rest." Kevin wasn't much in the mood to talk with them. Although it was very easy for him to create a power pill, he still needed some time to make 100 of them. Instead of returning home to be with Lily, Kevin went straight to Corwin Tower. It was better not to disturb anyone while he was refining medicinal pills. The night passed very quickly. Early the next morning, all of Chicago began to buzz. Williams Media had been on the verge of collapse, but not only had they survived, they'd even swallowed up the Booker Phoenix Corporation. The Quinns, the Archers, and the other families all stopped interfering with their business. Everyone in downtown Chicago was amazed to see a line of over 100 luxury sedans and limos heading towards Williams Media. It looked like a parade. Because power pills are so valuable, the police had to send extra units to help guard it. "Oh, Kevin isn't dead yet? It's like trying to kill a cockroach. What will it take to finish him off?" In the parking lot of Williams Media, Sherwin Blair was laughing out loud. When Kevin heard this, he began to scowl. "Why did I have to run into this idiot the moment I arrived?" Kevin thought to himself. Blair attracted a lot of attention with his snide remark, but the onlookers weren't impressed. As they walked towards the entrance, they whispered to each other. "Wasn't that the champion of the contest at the School for the Healing Arts?" "Didn't you say he'd been beaten half to death? He looks okay to me," said another. They all kept their voices down because they'd heard about what had happened the night before at the Salix Leaf Hotel. "What's wrong with you, scumbag? Didn't you hear what I just said about you?" Blair saw that Kevin was ignoring him, so he couldn't help getting angry. "I don't waste my time talking to idiots." Kevin locked his car and started walking toward the entrance. He wanted to put some distance between himself and Blair as soon as he could. "Who the hell do you think is stupid?" Blair sneered when he saw where Kevin had parked. "You're in trouble now. You actually parked in the special space reserved for the president of Williams Media." Then he got snotty and said to Kevin, "You probably don't know who the president of Williams Media is, do you? I'm not bragging to you, but I'm friends with him. Do you know why there are so many bigwigs here today? Well, Williams Media is going to offer power pills for sale. I'm sure a loser like you couldn't afford even a single pill if you saved up for the rest of your miserable life. Take my advice and get out of here as soon as you can." Blair went on and on. He just couldn't seem to shut up. "Are you here to buy herbal meds?" Kevin finally turned around and asked him point blank. "Of course I am. Didn't you know I've been developing myself? A power pill will take me to the next level." Blair puffed out his chest proudly. "Kevin, you probably think you're hot shit, but once I get my hands on a power pill, it won't be long before I surpass you. Then I'll crush you right in front of Kelly." When he heard Blair mention Kelly Emmett, Kevin got a nasty look on his face. "Well, you should really get to work then. I'll wait around for you to step on me," Kevin replied sarcastically as he patted Blair on the shoulder. "Stop right there. How dare you talk to me like that?" Blair had been out drinking the night before, so he didn't know what had happened at the Salix Leaf Hotel. "Okay." Kevin casually nodded his head. This frustrated Blair, and he got even angrier. He looked at Kevin's fancy clothes and suddenly remembered what had happened. "You piece of crap! Why are you all dressed up today? Could it be that you're here to buy herbal meds? Or are you working for the Williams Company?" Blair looked Kevin up and down and then tried to discourage him from getting any pills. "Do you know what kind of big shots are here today? They probably won't even let someone like you in the door." "Don't worry about me. I can take care of myself." Kevin just wanted to get inside and give the pills he'd made to Miss Wilson. "Then you must be working for Williams Media." Blair suddenly became excited and said, "Kevin, let me tell you, I'm friends with the director of your Human Resources Department. If you don't start being nicer to me, I'll ask him to fire you." Kevin couldn't even respond to Blair's ridiculous threat. All he managed to say was, But Blair rudely interrupted him. I know that it's not easy for you to get a good job, so I don't want to make things difficult for you. All you have to do is kiss my butt and I'll take care of everything. I may even let you show off in front of Kelly and me. I've got some business to take care of, Blair. If you really want me to kiss your butt, why don't you go over there and drop trow? Maybe I'll join you later. Kevin couldn't help mocking Blair as he walked away laughing. Stop right now. If you take another step, I'll have you thrown off the property. Blair pointed at Kevin and shouted. That drew the attention of more than half of the people in the parking lot. Who is that person? Why have I never seen him before? They wondered. Who knows? Maybe he's a new hire? One of them replied. Then a middle-aged man quickly walked over to Blair. Sherwin, what are you doing here so early? There's still more than an hour before the auction, the man asked him respectfully. Mr. Bennett, you got here just in time. This man is an employee of Williams Media, isn't he? Well, he just insulted me. How do you think we should deal with it? Blair puffed himself up, and you could tell just how important he felt at the moment. The man looked at Kevin and snapped. So you're new here? I'm Patrick Bennett from the Human Resources Department. I order you to apologize to Mr. Blair right this instant. Otherwise, you'll be off the payroll today. Kevin was stunned for a moment when he heard that. Then a smile gradually appeared on his face. I didn't realize the director of the Human Resources Department had so much authority. He can fire the company's employees at will? Kevin sneered in reply. Cut the crap. Either apologize or you're out of here. It's your choice. Bennett glared at him, not giving him any chance to explain himself or even negotiate. I want him to apologize to me this instant. Blair whined as he glared at Kevin. What are you waiting for? Didn't you hear what Mr. Blair just said? Bennett roared loudly. Just as Kevin was about to take out his phone and give Miss Wilson a call, a delicate but angry voice suddenly came from behind Blair and his buddy. Patrick Bennett, what are you doing? Miss Wilson quickly walked up to Kevin and offered her hand. Mr. President, I'm so sorry I'm late. I hope you weren't inconvenienced. Blair and Bennett looked at each other and then looked back at Kevin. What was going on here? Blair was certain that he was finally going to get even with Kevin as he complained to his friend Patrick Bennett about him and asked for Kevin to be fired from Williams Media. Just then, Miss Wilson showed up and apologized to Kevin for her lateness. Blair and Bennett were speechless. What the heck was going on? Don't worry about it, Miss Wilson. I just got here a few minutes ago anyway, Kevin replied with a smile. Since Kevin had been the CEO of Williams Media, Miss Wilson had been in charge of handling pretty much everything at the company. She'd done a stellar job as chief of staff, addressing all problems big and small, including minor incidents like these two men who were bothering her boss. Otherwise, the company would have closed down long ago. It's been hard on you for the past few days, hasn't it? Kevin expressed his appreciation. Thank you, Mr. President. It's kind of you to notice. No matter how difficult things get, I'll always be loyal to the company, Miss Wilson declared firmly. Sandra, Miss Wilson, what did you just call him? Bennett finally came back to his senses. Mr. Williams is our CEO. You just joined the company, so I'm sure you haven't had a chance to meet him yet, Miss Wilson explained politely. Then she took on a very serious tone. I seem to have heard you shouting at the CEO as I walked up. Before Kevin could say anything, Bennett fainted and dropped right on the ground. As he started to snap out of it, he sat on the ground blabbering as he begged Kevin to forgive him. I'm sorry, sir. I never intended to upset you. My behavior was unforgivable. The news of what had happened at the Salix Leaf Hotel the night before had already spread across Chicago's upper class like wildfire. Everyone who knew about the incident was intensely afraid of the president of Williams Media. Bennett was concerned about losing his job, but he was even more afraid of losing his life. You're acting pretty spineless right now. I think I preferred you as an arrogant bastard like you were just a minute ago. Kevin shook his head lightly as he looked down at Bennett. Sir,
I was wrong. Really, really wrong. I'll take whatever punishment you choose."
Bennett started banging his head on the pavement until a large bruise appeared on his forehead. Kevin casually made an executive decision. "You can stay with the company, but the Human Resources Department doesn't seem appropriate for someone of your temperament. If you want to stay on the payroll, you'll be in charge of the parking lot sanitation crew for the next 6 months."
"Thank you, sir."
Bennett heaved a sigh of relief as if he'd just been granted amnesty. Then he walked over to Blair.
"Thanks for getting me into this mess. From now on, we're no longer friends."
Blair hung his head in shame. He would never have guessed that the guy he'd always looked down on was actually in charge of a major company. Kevin's indifferent attitude toward him made Blair want to dig a hole and crawl inside it. When Kevin ignored him, it was even worse than any words or action. It made him feel worthless. "You useless son of a bitch! How dare you ignore me!" Blair clenched his fist tightly and stared at Kevin's back as he walked away. "I'll fix you," Blair mumbled as he took out his phone and made a call. "I'm sorry you had to suffer such a disturbing confrontation. It's my fault for not coming down here to pick you up." Miss Wilson still felt guilty about letting Kevin get in such an embarrassing situation. "It's all right. As long as today's auction goes smoothly, I don't care what else happens," Kevin replied nonchalantly. Of course, Kevin had made so much progress in his training that he didn't really care about people like Blair or Bennett. "I'm very curious about something, Mr. President. How do you always stay so calm when you're humiliated in public?" Miss Wilson had thought about this a lot ever since she met Kevin, so she just had to ask him. The answer is pretty simple. Some people will never learn, so why bother to argue with them? Kevin said as he quickly walked towards the office building. At the same time, in the backyard of the Williams family's mansion in New York City, Director Silver was sitting in a chair watching Kelly Emmett practice her sword katas. She'd been very pleased with Kelly's performance during the contest at the School for the Healing Arts. Although Kevin ended up being rescued, she was very sure that the scum wouldn't survive. Suddenly, Kelly's phone started vibrating on the table. Director Silver reflexively picked up the call for her. "Kelly, where are you? Do you know that bastard Kevin is still alive?" Blair asked urgently. When Director Silver heard this, she suddenly stood up from her chair and slammed her fist on the table, shattering it to pieces. "What did you say? That scum Kevin didn't die? How is this possible?" she asked in disbelief. "You must be Director Silver?" Blair asked when he realized that Kelly hadn't picked up the call. "You saw Kevin with your own eyes." Director Silver was so excited that she completely ignored Blair's question. "Of course, ma'am. Not only did Kevin not die, but it turns out he's the president of the Williams Company. He just entered Williams Media's downtown office building." Blair told her everything he could. He could sense that they had a shared hatred for Kevin Williams. "Keep an eye on that scumbag for me. I'll come and finish him off as soon as I can." Director Silver hung up the phone and stormed out of the courtyard. "I wonder why she was called away," Kelly wondered as she watched her leave. "Kelly, stay here with the Williams family and continue practicing your sword katas. I'm going to Chicago. This time I'll get rid of Kevin for good." After saying this, Director Silver headed to the field and took off in her private helicopter. There was a loud bang as Kelly's sword dropped to the patio. So Kevin wasn't dead? Kelly started trembling. Ever since the end of the contest, she'd been extremely worried about Kevin's safety. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see Kevin in her mind, covered in blood. "He's not dead. That's great. He's not dead," Kelly kept repeating to herself. The more she thought about it, the more upset she got. Kelly quickly turned around and ran out of the Williams family's mansion. The large room on the 13th floor of Williams Media's office building was filled with people. It had been a long time since there had been a gathering like this in Chicago. Miss Wilson stood at the podium dressed in her most professional outfit and smiled at the crowd. "I'm very happy that everyone could come and support us today. I think everyone knows the nature of this auction, so I won't waste your time. Please give a warm welcome to our company's CEO." For a moment, there was overwhelming applause. Williams Media's CEO was probably the most mysterious figure in all of Chicago. Only a few people had ever seen him in person, but there were a lot of rumors that made people terrified of what he could do. However, when Kevin went on stage, there was an immediate uproar. They all started commenting to each other.
Is there some kind of mistake? The president of Williams Media can't possibly be so young.
Other people thought he looked familiar and recognized him as the Jones family's good-for-nothing son-in-law. They thought it was a joke and started to doubt the authenticity of the pills that were up for auction. The ones who were the most shocked were the members of the Steele family and the Butler family. None of the Jones family members even qualified to attend the event. Kevin picked up on the doubt, shock, and disdain, but he remained exceptionally calm. If everyone is finished speaking, I hope we can have some quiet. After all, this is an auction, and we need to maintain a courteous atmosphere. A young man suddenly stood up, pointed at Kevin, and said loudly, "What could a loser like you possibly have to offer? I think the power pills that Williams Media told us about must be fake." Another man stood up and shouted,
"Some of you may not know it, but this man is a freeloader who's been living off his wife's money for the past 3 years."
Next, Ronald Campbell got up and slowly walked up to the stage.
"Mr. Williams, do you have any proof that your power pill is authentic? Will it have any effect at all on the human body?"
Mitchell Cook and the others frowned when they heard this. Of course, they understood what Ronald Campbell was doing there. Because Kevin had insulted him the night before, he deliberately came to ruin today's auction. "What do you mean, Mr. Campbell?" Kevin asked him with a straight face.
"What I'm saying isn't clear enough? How about this? Kevin, I'm accusing you of impersonating the president of Williams Media, selling fake herbal medicine to deceive customers, and fraud,"
Campbell said as he slapped his hand on the table. Emo, Adriana Wright, and the others quickly stood up. Drake was about to rush forward, but he was stopped by Mitchell Cook. No matter what, Ronald Campbell was still a very respected citizen. It was better not to offend him. "What right do you have to accuse me? Do you think that the employees of Williams Media can't prove that I'm the CEO?" Kevin sneered as he stared into the man's eyes. Then he added, "There's one more thing. What evidence do you have to claim that my pills are fake?"
"Isn't it simple? If you're honest, you'll let me take every pill that you put up for auction and have them tested for purity. Only the company's CEO could make a decision like that, right?"
Ronald Campbell said coldly. He knew that he'd maneuvered Kevin into an impossible position. "It's not that I don't want to give you a pill. It's just that there aren't many technologies that can be used to test a power pill," Kevin explained. What he meant was that an herbal med was more than just its simple ingredients. The processing imbued it with qualities that couldn't be measured with any known equipment. The best test was to actually take one. And who could guarantee that, after Kevin gave the power pill to Ronald Campbell, it would be returned? How could they continue with the auction after an interruption like this?
"Well, if you don't give me the pill now, how can you prove that it works on a human subject?"
Ronald Campbell turned around and looked at the hundreds of people who were present in the hall. "If you knew anything about herbal medication, you'd never say something so stupid." Kevin sighed helplessly. This auction was starting to get a little more complicated than expected. Ronald Campbell, a commissioner with the FDA, had just demanded that Kevin turn over the power pills so their purity could be verified by the government. He was obviously just trying to give Kevin a hard time, but this could certainly throw the entire auction into chaos. The auction attendees immediately started to whisper to each other after they heard Campbell's demand.
"Are you sure you want to insult an official of the U.S. government?"
Campbell's complacent expression suddenly turned into resentment. "I think you're not only an idiot, but you're also a little naive." Kevin glanced at him blankly. "There are at least 30 experts in herbal medicine among the hundreds of people in this room. Don't you agree? Why don't you ask them about the pill?" Kevin's words hit Campbell right where it hurt. Most high-ranking federal employees had to swear off of herbal medication to avoid getting any false positives in drug testing, which could ruin their careers. So Ronald Campbell knew very little about herbalism. Campbell had made the choice early in his career, even though it meant missing out on a lot. Until now, he still had regrets in his heart. Kevin didn't want to waste any more time with him, so he took out a power pill. He scanned the crowd and said coldly, "The auction is about to begin. There's one thing that I must make clear in advance. If anyone suspects that there is something wrong with my pill, or if you're looking down on me because of the rumors about my relationship with the Jones family, then you can leave now." What Kevin wanted to do the most in today's auction was to make his own reputation known to the general public. He wasn't about to put up with any crap from anyone. He didn't care who was attending the auction, even Commissioner Campbell. Campbell stepped forward to stop the auction.
"I told you that you can't sell a single herbal pill before they're inspected. Otherwise..."
"Or else you'll use your authority to sanction Williams' media?" Kevin interrupted Campbell before he could finish. "Commissioner Campbell, I don't understand. Why do you insist that there's something wrong with my herbal meds?"
"If you can prove that there's nothing wrong with the power pills, I'll leave immediately. And I'll even stay out of your way from now on."
Campbell grinned broadly to show his sincerity. "How about finding someone to test the medicine?" Kevin looked straight into his eyes, and everyone in the room could sense his strength.
"No, this is a matter of life and death. If someone's health were put in danger because of your pill, I would be held directly responsible as a government official."
Campbell sounded very earnest in his concern for public safety. "Then what do you have in mind?" Kevin asked calmly.
"You have to take one of the power pills right in front of everyone in this room,"
Campbell said with a sneer. As soon as he had finished speaking, everybody's eyes were focused on Kevin. Almost everyone thought that Campbell had a very good idea. The power pill was the first step in helping someone improve their physical development. If there really was a problem with the pill, then Kevin would suffer the consequences if he took it. On top of that, a lot of the people in the room still had their doubts. Common sense told them that the power pill was a rare treasure. The one that turned up in the Pearl family's auction was the only one known to exist in all of Chicago in decades. But now the Williams Company was suddenly offering over 100 of them? How could this not make people feel that it was unbelievable? They were very suspicious of where these pills came from. Did they truly possess the legendary effects of the power pill? Kevin's expression was unusually mysterious. Although there were no problems with the medicinal pills he'd produced, they were no longer of much use to him. In his highly advanced body, they were a drop in the bucket, and nobody would be able to tell that they'd made a difference. So if nobody could see the effects of the power pill, why would they bother to bid for one?
"Why are you hesitating? Is there really a problem with the pills? It looks like even the company's president is afraid."
The expression on Campbell's face looked even more smug than before. Seeing that Kevin didn't say anything yet, Ronald Campbell took that as an admission of defeat. The auction's attendees all started whispering to each other, and some of them were even pointing at Kevin.
"What the hell is this? Is there really a problem with the pills?"
one of them commented. And another one said, "I think the Williams Company is just stringing us along. It's all a big scam." They appreciated that Campbell had shown up to expose Kevin's deception. Then Campbell announced in his most official tone of voice,
"Since you refuse to take the medicine yourself, it means that there must be something wrong with it. I'm declaring that all the pills in this auction will be confiscated from the Williams Corporation. Kevin Williams, you will be charged with counterfeiting, money laundering, and fraud."
Just as he was about to conclude the matter, a rough voice came from the crowd.
"Commissioner Campbell, please wait."
"So it's Dalton Steele."
Campbell turned around and looked at Dalton, who was walking towards him. He couldn't help but ask in surprise,
"What do you mean by this interruption?"
"Mr. Campbell, I think it would be inappropriate for you to accuse President Williams of any crimes."
As Dalton said this, he looked over at Kevin and the meeting was understood.
Without solid evidence, I advise you not to rush to make such an important decision. If you make false accusations against President Williams, there will be serious consequences.
What do you mean? Everyone in this room heard what Kevin said about me earlier. And isn't it true that he refused to take the pill himself? What other evidence do we need?
Campbell clenched his fist tightly as he replied to Dalton in a stern voice. Suddenly, everyone heard a very feminine voice declare, "I can prove that his pill is just fine." In the blink of an eye, a beautiful woman appeared on the stage. A puzzled look flashed across Ronald Campbell's eyes.
Who are you? And how can you prove it?
"I'm Nadia Alexander, the president of the Herbalist Society's Southern Branch," she replied quietly. A smile immediately appeared on Kevin's face. He could see everyone's expressions change when they heard this, including Campbell. Once again, they all started to whisper to each other. "There's even someone from the Herbalist Society here today? Did the leader of the Herbalist Society come here just to help President Williams?" one of the people asked. "It looks like now we can find out if the herbal meds are real or fake," his friend answered. Ronald Campbell got a gloomy look on his face. As a government official, he knew the Herbalist Society better than anyone else there. For a non-governmental organization, the society still had a lot of clout. Ronald Campbell bit the bullet and warned her.
President Alexander, please don't talk nonsense. This is a matter of public health.
"Mr. Campbell, you don't need to worry about this. Since the Herbalist Society handles these situations all the time, I'm sure we're more than qualified to determine the quality of the herbal meds that are being offered at this auction." Nadia Alexander didn't even look at him while she spoke. She took the pill from Kevin's hand and carefully examined it. She pulled some compact analytic devices out of her satchel and examined the pill right on the table in front of the crowd. After looking at the results and even using a good old-fashioned magnifying glass, Nadia Alexander slowly announced, "This is a high-grade power pill. Its effect is more than double that of an ordinary power pill." Suddenly, the whole room exploded with excitement. The same people who had been doubtful just a few minutes earlier began to comment on this development.
Like I said, the Williams Company is the leading business in the Chicago region. They would never cheat their customers.
They couldn't believe that they hadn't trusted Kevin, and they all started to praise his skill. In the midst of all the excitement, people began to return to their seats as they stared at the power pill on the stage with lust in their eyes.
No, this is definitely not a genuine power pill.
Ronald Campbell stammered as he took a step back. "Mr. Campbell, are you telling me that your herbalism skills are higher than mine?" Nadia Alexander frowned and asked coldly.
That's not what I meant, President Alexander. Please, don't misunderstand.
Campbell tried to smile, but he really felt like crying. "Does President Williams have another power pill?" Nadia Alexander turned her head and looked at Kevin approvingly. "Miss Wilson, please bring our pills out here," Kevin ordered his chief of staff as he smiled. "Mr. Campbell, don't forget what you just told me. You have to stay away from me when you see me in the future." Kevin patted Ronald Campbell on the shoulder, then he turned to Drake, who was sitting in the front row, and said, "Please show Mr. Campbell the door." Drake stood up immediately, walked over to Campbell, and made a gesture toward the exit. Next, over 100 pills were pushed onto the stage by a team of employees pushing display carts. There was a loud noise from the crowd, and everyone stared at the power pills like vultures, ready to snatch them up. Kevin smiled and took a step forward. He had a certain presence that everyone could feel, and they all calmed down and settled into their seats. "Please don't forget that this is an auction. Remember to be respectful of each other. Please remain in your seats and raise your cards to place your bids," Kevin explained with a faint smile. Kevin did his best to control the crowd. After Campbell's interference, if Kevin wanted the auction to continue smoothly, he had to be a lot more assertive. As expected, even the wealthy dignitaries became a lot more docile. Some of them even looked at Kevin with fear in their eyes. Their opinion of Kevin had changed completely. Somehow, he had been reborn, and now he was a rising star among Chicago's younger generation. "Would you like to have a chat with me?" Nadia Alexander asked him. "Of course I would. I have to thank you for helping me today," Kevin replied with a smile. Then he asked Miss Wilson to host the rest of the auction. He patted Dalton on the shoulder and left the room. Nadia Alexander, who was standing outside in the corridor, nodded when she heard all the excitement of the auction in the main room. "I didn't expect you to be so good at business. With just 100 power pills, you're going to make a lot of money. And you've also gotten all the influential people in Chicago to respect you in the future. Williams Media will be invincible from now on." "It's just a small step, but you're very perceptive to pick up on my overall plan," Kevin replied in a flattering tone of voice. The reason why he had chosen to offer the power pill to everyone was to show them that if they wanted to increase their development and training, they'd do well to work with the Williams Company and not against it. "But you have to watch out for Ronald Campbell. He isn't easy to deal with," Nadia Alexander reminded him. "Don't worry, I'll be careful with that guy." Kevin acted like he wouldn't be a problem, but he still felt a headache coming on. Although Ronald Campbell was weak, he was still a federal official. Even with Kevin's ties to the Alliance and the Myriads, he had to tread lightly. Otherwise, Kevin wouldn't have let Campbell leave so easily. After a long silence, Nadia asked Kevin what had been on her mind. "Did you make all those power pills yourself?" Kevin gave her an intent look, and the corners of his mouth turned up into a slight smile. He knew that she'd finally gotten to the point. "I'll answer your question with one of my own. Do you know how to make a power pill?" Kevin's hands were in his pockets, and he appeared very calm. His question was actually very profound. If Nadia knew how to make a power pill, it could only mean that the pill's formula had never really been lost. It was just that it had been hidden by the Herbalist Society or some other organization. And maybe Kevin had found the formula by pure chance. But he didn't expect Nadia to stare at him like he was a fool after he asked his question. "I thought you were smarter than that. A power pill is a miracle drug. Its formula was lost decades ago. Otherwise, why do you think they could bring so much money at auction? Those people in that room have more money than common sense," Nadia grumbled. "Well, maybe that's true," Kevin laughed awkwardly. "Maybe. It's all because the power pill is too valuable. Even though the Herbalist Society has been researching it for decades, we still haven't come up with an accurate formula." Nadia, who hadn't finished speaking, quickly came back to her senses. She almost let Kevin trick her into revealing too much. "Don't change the topic. Just answer my question." "All right, I'll lay all my cards on the table. I made the whole batch of power pills." Kevin knew that he couldn't hide it from her anymore. He had to admit it. Although Nadia had already guessed it, when she heard Kevin admit it with her own ears, she let out a gasp. "I have to say, Kevin, you really are a genius." Nadia sighed as she thought about what he'd accomplished. "Is there anything else, President Alexander? If not, I still have a few things to deal with today, and I don't have much time to waste." Kevin yawned as he started to turn and walk away. But he had the feeling that she wasn't finished with him yet. But now he had other things on his mind. Although the Williams Company had been saved from bankruptcy, Phoebe had been taken to Detroit by the Hayes family. He had to find the right opportunity to save her, as well as do all the things he promised Mackenzie. Up until now, he had no idea that Roger Knott had been abducted. So Kevin didn't really have the time to waste chatting in the corridor. "I have a presumptuous request. I don't know if you can agree to it." Nadia stared at Kevin and spoke to him in hushed tones. "Tell me what your request is first, then we'll see." Kevin wouldn't be so foolish as to agree without knowing what he was getting into. "I need you to come with me to save someone." Nadia suddenly became extremely serious. "There's one thing you need to understand. Although I know how to concoct pills, I don't know how to rescue people. You should go and find someone else." Kevin didn't even think about it, but refused her outright. "No, listen to me clearly. The person's life is in danger right now. He can't be saved without the life prolongation pill. If you save him, I believe that it will bring great benefits both to you and the people around you." Nadia's eyes showed a hint of anticipation. Is the person really that important? Kevin couldn't help wondering. He'd seen the life prolongation pill in his sources. It was a high-grade medicinal pill, and if it was refined properly, it could have astounding effects. One of them was obviously that it could extend someone's life. But the whole process was very complex, and Kevin couldn't guarantee that it would be possible. Who is the person you want to save? Kevin just had to know what he was getting involved in. You don't need to ask. I can only tell you that the person is extremely important. He's someone that the entire city of Chicago can't afford to lose or to offend. Nadia explained what she could but left out the specifics. Someone from the federal government, the state, and in a high position? Kevin reached out and leaned on the windowsill, tapping it lightly with his fingers. I really can't tell you, but if you can concoct the life prolongation pill, the benefits you can get are definitely beyond your imagination. Nadia started to get nervous just talking about it. I'm very curious. Isn't your herbalist society made up of actual herbalists? Can't any of you make the life prolongation pill? This was the biggest doubt Kevin had at the moment. Stop teasing me. The herbalist society doesn't have the formula for the life prolongation pill. Otherwise, why would I come and beg you? Nadia was starting to become somewhat impatient. That's when Kevin realized that he'd had an advantage all along. The book he took from the Alliance had formulas that had been lost to the rest of the world, and he knew how to make them. After thinking for a while, Kevin nodded. Okay, I promise to help you. Really? Nadia asked in shock. When he nodded, it only meant that Kevin was willing to save the man, but it would also be proof that he had the formula for the life prolongation pill. Imagine if this news ever spread. How many influential and powerful people would come to Chicago to beg him for the pill? But Nadia didn't suspect that this was Kevin's motive. She suddenly looked around as if she were checking to see if anyone was watching them. Then I have another request. When the time comes, can you say that you did it on behalf of the Herbalist Society? Why? Do you want free advertising? Kevin widened his eyes in shock, then he said, I really don't like to be tied down by formalities. He still couldn't figure out Nadia's little scheme. If he did her this favor in the name of the Herbalist Society, wouldn't he become a member of the group? Moreover, it was possible that he wouldn't even see half of the benefits. But the Herbalist Society's reputation would get an enormous boost. Kevin, you have to know that I'm doing this for your sake. Nadia's tone became serious again. Think about it. If your skill in herbalism is so superior, none of the groups in the herbal underground will let you go. Only the Herbalist Society can protect you. She continued to convince him to go along with her plan. Even if you aren't worried that any of them will come and cause trouble for you, you still have family, don't you? Your parents, wife, and close friends. That's enough, President Alexander. Kevin rubbed his temples and interrupted Nadia before she could finish her thought. If I was still the same person I used to be, I might be afraid of what you just said, but I'm not that man anymore. As he finished speaking, Nadia could feel an unusual power emanating from Kevin. Her perception was that he wasn't the thin young man standing in front of her. He felt more like a giant who reached from the ground all the way up to the clouds. It was a very strange feeling. Nadia had no doubt at that moment that Kevin could destroy her in an instant and leave no trace. He was becoming something more than human. Now, do you know why I created over 100 power pills and let the Williams Company auction them off? Kevin suddenly calmed down and Nadia felt the terrifying pressure fade away. You actually... Nadia was so shocked that she couldn't even speak. There are some things that you need to understand, and there is no need to say it out loud. Kevin gave Nadia an enigmatic smile and patted her on the shoulder before heading downstairs. As he walked away, he said, Stop by my office tomorrow morning to pick me up. As she watched Kevin walk away, Nadia started to recover her senses. She realized that she'd broken out in a cold sweat and probably needed to go change her outfit. Before Kevin got down to the parking lot, his phone suddenly rang. He answered it as he walked to his car. "Hi, Lily. What's wrong?" Kevin raised his eyebrows and teased her. "Did you miss me?"
"Kevin, you need to hurry home. The dean of the school and a lot of other officials are here."
He could hear the panic in Lily's voice. "Okay, I'll be right there." Kevin, who by then was sitting in his car, suddenly frowned. He subconsciously felt a little annoyed by this interruption. But he had to go help Lily, so he mashed the accelerator and his Pagani shot out of the parking garage like a rocket. It only took half an hour for Kevin to get from downtown up to the apartment. When he walked in the door, he saw Professor Murdoch standing there, along with the heads of the other herbal schools. Harley Shepard and Wayne Ford were sitting patiently on the sofa. "What a pleasant surprise, but I wish you'd given us some warning. I would have prepared some food and drinks for you." Kevin greeted everyone warmly. They all looked at him very stoically, and one of them said, "We searched all over town. You're a hard man to find." But after Kevin's performance in the contest, many of the major players in the herbal schools made sure to pay more attention to him, especially after finding out about his relationship with Williams Media. They were a lot less arrogant toward him than before. In fact, they started complimenting him on his quick recovery and offered to teach him new skills. Shepard and Ford both shook their heads as they watched. They looked at each other and saw the surprise deep in each other's eyes. With all of their experience, how could they not have seen the changes in Kevin's body? "Why don't you tell me what you really think of me? All this attention is starting to go to my head." Kevin was used to being ridiculed and ignored by others, and now he was suddenly being flattered by these renowned experts. For a moment, he was thrown off balance because he really wasn't used to it. When he said that, a lot of them suddenly got very quiet and seemed shy, if that was possible. They had a lot of things they wanted to say, but weren't sure just how to do it. "What's wrong? Don't tell me you're really here for a social visit," Kevin asked in confusion. They all started talking excitedly again, asking him about his family and checking to see if he needed any help. One of them even offered to show him an exotic medicinal herb. Seeing everyone talking at the same time, Kevin did his best to hold back his laughter. Dorothy was standing in the corner watching and couldn't believe what she was seeing. She rubbed her eyes several times and even pinched herself to make sure she wasn't dreaming. How could all these people be praising the same son-in-law she'd always treated as a worthless piece of trash? Earlier that day, when Dorothy saw all the luxury limos pull up in front of the building, she thought maybe some rich suitor was there to visit her daughter. When she found out that all these people were actually looking for Kevin, she was annoyed and thought he'd gotten in trouble again and that they had decided to try and find him at home. Boy, was she wrong. But what exactly did all these people want from Kevin? When Kevin got back home, the heads of all the major schools were in his living room, including the dean of the School for the Healing Arts. Dorothy stood there in disbelief, wondering if there was more to Kevin than she'd always believed. However, Lily, who was standing beside her, was so excited that her body was trembling. Her eyes were so red that she felt she could cry at any moment. In the past, she'd always blamed Kevin for not being able to live up to his potential. But now, all these powerful people were scrambling to please him, making Lily feel that the whole situation was unreal. But the truth was right in front of her. Kevin had somehow transformed himself into an exceptional man. "Why don't you just say what you came here for? I still have to cook for my wife later." Kevin's gaze swept across the group. Finally, Jeffrey Bowie got up the courage to speak and stammered,
"Kevin, we want to ask, do you have any power pills available?"
"Oh, so that's what you're here for." Kevin realized their true intentions. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. They were all famous experts, so they naturally didn't want to ask a favor from someone with lower rank. But the power pill was really too important to them. Before they could relax, Kevin replied, "I'm sorry, but I don't have one on me." Suddenly, they weren't so pleasant anymore and started complaining.
"Why don't you have one with you? Didn't you just give 100 of them to Williams Media? Are you looking down on us, Kevin?"
It looked like they were about to start bullying him, they were so desperate. "Don't be anxious. I haven't finished yet. I don't have any on hand, but my mentor does. You've met him. Haven't you?" Kevin took on an uncharacteristic shy tone. They all suddenly became friendly again, asking Kevin if his mentor was taking on new students and being very apologetic for overreacting. They'd all been shocked by the Night King's performance at the contest. Deep inside, Kevin was sneering at them for being so fickle. "Unfortunately, I don't know when I'll see him again." Kevin scratched his head and shrugged his shoulders. "The old gentleman has always been elusive." Before they could say anything, Dorothy suddenly squeezed in front of Kevin. She straightened her back and asked, "Everyone, please listen to me. I'm Kevin's mother-in-law. His mentor is very close to me. Please tell me what you want." They all started asking her excitedly to put in a good word for her with the Night King and began offering ridiculous amounts of money. "What we're asking would be a big deal for people like you and me, but to Kevin's mentor, it's a trifle," one of them announced. "I'm willing to offer a reward of $500 million. The dean next to him shouted, "Is that all? I'll pay as much as $600 million. Please get them for us, ma'am." Hearing numbers like this, Dorothy's eyes lit up and she was overjoyed. With so many people offering hundreds of millions each, she'd quickly become the richest woman in the country. "No problem. Everyone please leave now. When I get the power pills, I'll send Kevin to deliver them to you." Dorothy was smiling from ear to ear. She knew very well that these people were rich and powerful. Dorothy never dreamed that people like them would be so respectful to her. "Thank you for your trouble." They all got up and thanked her one by one as they ran out of the apartment, beaming with joy. Shepard and Ford stood up with smiles on their faces. After telling Kevin to see them on campus when he had the time, they followed the group out the door. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the apartment turned cold. "Mom," Kevin started to speak to Dorothy. She interrupted him as usual. "What are you still doing here? Hurry up and go find your mentor. Ask him to bring me all the power pills so I can discuss the price with those people again." Dorothy crossed her arms in front of her chest and glared at Kevin. "Originally, I didn't want you to enter my house again, but now you suddenly have a mentor who can make some money for me. I'll reluctantly allow you to stay here for the time being." "Mom, my mentor is really hard to find." Kevin smirked when he saw the look on Dorothy's face, but he was used to her disagreeable attitude. "If it isn't easy to find him, why are you still standing there? I don't care how you find him. Did you hear how much they were willing to pay? I'd be set for the rest of my life." Dorothy looked at Kevin with disgust, then went and sat down on the sofa. Then she started again. "Don't dawdle. Hurry up and go find him. If you can't get the pills, don't bother coming back." Lily walked up to Kevin with a sad face and turned to Dorothy. "Mom, what are you doing? He just got over his injuries." "What are you worried about? He looks okay. Your husband has been freeloading for so long, it's time for him to repay us. Besides, it's his mentor stuff. I'll just give him a little money, right?" Dorothy could see nothing but dollar signs after hearing all those offers for the power pills. Then she said in a very snooty tone, like she was already filthy rich, "Kevin's passing up an opportunity to make millions, maybe billions. Fortunately, I'm smart when it comes to money." "We can't take his money, Mom," Lily said quietly. "What did you say? Are you crazy?" Dorothy jumped up from her seat. "Do you know how tough things have been for us? The Jones family's dividends are almost nothing. Should we let this trash support us? Is that even possible?" "We really can't accept the money. It belongs to Kevin, or it should go to his mentor," Lily replied timidly. "You're nuts. With that much money, we'd never have to work again." Dorothy was so angry that her eyes were bugging out. "Anyway, I don't care. If this useless slob doesn't bring the money back, I definitely won't let him keep living here. You'll have to choose between him and me." Lily wanted to say something, but Kevin stopped her. "Lily, don't quarrel with Mom. My mentor came and went without a trace. I won't be able to find him for a while. Stay home and rest. I'm going out for a walk." Kevin gently patted her on the shoulder. "Let's talk about it later." Kevin kissed her on the forehead, turned around, and quickly walked out the door. As Kevin was walking down the street, he couldn't help but laugh. The leaders of the top 10 organizations used to look down on him and even attacked him. Now they shamelessly wanted a power pill? Not in this lifetime. Kevin sneered in his heart. Suddenly, his eyes grew wide. He saw a sharp sword heading right at him. The person holding the sword was precisely who he was hoping to meet. "Thanks for saving me the trouble of looking for you." Kevin scanned his surroundings, then turned around and quickly rushed to the lakeshore. "Where are you running, scum?" Ariana roared fiercely. She pushed off with her back foot and ran towards Kevin. After a chase that lasted for more than 10 minutes, Kevin looked at the vast lake and suddenly stopped. He had a mysterious smile on his face. "Scum, let's see who else will save you today." She landed heavily on the ground and her eyes looked like they were on fire. "You really shouldn't have a grudge with me. You only listened to the Williams family's lies. You've repeatedly tried to kill me. Haven't you had enough?" Kevin didn't panic at all. He crossed his arms in front of his chest with a calm expression on his face. "No, you're pure scum. I'll take your life to avenge Randall's death." Then she erupted in an explosion of fury. In the blink of an eye, she pulled her sword and lunged at Kevin. It would have been an incredible sight for anyone to see on the Chicago lakefront. But just as the tip of the sword was about to pierce Kevin's chest, he suddenly caught it with 2 fingers. "I won't argue with you because you're simply ignorant of the truth, but don't think I'm a pushover." Then Kevin twisted his wrist slightly and snapped the sword. Ariana felt a powerful force coming at her, but even with all of her training and experience, she couldn't resist it at all. She took a few steps back and almost fell to the ground. "I hope today is the last time you come looking for me. Otherwise, I'll destroy the Union. Do you hear me?" Although Kevin said it casually, there was a hint of certainty in his tone. "You? How is this possible?" Ariana stood there in disbelief, staring at Kevin like a fool. Her eyes were no longer bright and shiny, but now had become dim and dull. "Of course this is possible. In your ignorance, you bullied the weak, but I can let bygones be bygones. The reason why I brought you to the beach today is to tell you that I am no longer who I was before. If you dare to offend me again in the future, I promise I'll settle the score with you," Kevin announced coldly. Although Kevin really wanted to kill her then and there, his rational mind told him that doing so would bring a lot of trouble to the Union. "Bullshit!" Ariana roared in anger. Kevin's words were the biggest insult to her. She'd been famous for so many years, but she had never thought that she would be humiliated like this. "I will kill you today!" Because she was so angry, Ariana's body began to tremble slightly, and all her energy seemed to flow out. "You don't know what's good for you." Kevin shook his head lightly. He lifted his right hand and gathered all his energy, sending a punch right to the middle of her chest. She spat out a large mouthful of blood as she was sent flying more than 30 feet away. Ariana fell to the ground and didn't get up. Her face was still filled with disbelief. She couldn't even take a single strike from Kevin? Who would believe it had happened if word of this spread? Kevin didn't even look at her. He just turned around and started walking towards the city. Ariana knew why Kevin hadn't killed her. It wasn't because he looked down on her, it was because he didn't even care about her. She was so angry that she almost had a heart attack. Ariana spat out another mouthful of blood, and then she fainted. While this was going on, Penny, Mackenzie, and their other beautiful wealthy friends had gathered at her mansion in the Chicago suburbs. But this time there was less laughter and joking around. On the contrary, everyone had an extremely serious look on their face. "Mackenzie, don't worry too much about it. According to the news I heard, the deputy leader has already recovered. He was the one who got first place in the contest, and Grandpa Knott shouldn't be in too much danger." Brenda put her arm around her friend's shoulder and tried her best to comfort her. "That's right.
Your grandfather is one of the higher-ups in the Myriads. The deputy leader will definitely not ignore his problem," one of the women commented. But they wondered if they should go find Kevin right away anyway. Another friend asked, "But where is he now? After he showed up at the Salix Leaf Hotel last night, he mysteriously disappeared." Mackenzie let out a long sigh after hearing her sister's words. Kevin had already been seriously injured because of her grandfather. How could she have the nerve to beg him for help? "I think it's worth a try. Mackenzie, why don't I go with you?" Penny offered as she put down her tablet. After thinking about it for a long time, Mackenzie gently shook her head. "Forget it. He's just recovered. I'll wait a few more days before going to find him." Although she said this, Mackenzie was still very concerned about her grandfather who'd been abducted. The leaders of the schools were all interested in making an example out of him. She really didn't know what kind of methods they would use to deal with Grandpa Knott. Kevin took a long walk from the lake to the School for the Healing Arts. The school was on vacation and almost all the students were home. The campus was practically deserted. He went to Harley Shepard's office just to drop in. Just as he was about to knock on the door, he could hear a relaxed voice announce,
"Come on in. The door isn't locked."
"That's an interesting skill you have, sir. You could feel it was me on the other side of the door," Kevin said as he walked into the office smiling.
"Can't you do that yet?"
Shepard asked him flippantly. He was lounging in his chair as he looked at Kevin with a smile.
"You suffered a very serious injury. This is indeed the best time for you to take the golden pill."
Kevin's smile froze on his face when he heard this. He didn't know what to say for a moment.
"You don't need to be so surprised. Your mentor and I have met a few times. Unfortunately, the most important medicinal ingredient for refining medicinal pills was taken from me."
Shepard slowly stood up. Then he looked Kevin right in the eyes.
"I know why you came here today. There's a matter of great importance that you need to discuss with me."
Kevin stood rooted to the ground. Shepard seemed to know exactly what was going on in his life.
"Why aren't you saying anything?"
Shepard asked him curiously. "You seem to know everything, sir. What else can I add?" Kevin replied as he awkwardly shrugged his shoulders.
"If your power increases by another level, you'll be able to do the exact same thing to me,"
Shepard said with a meaningful tone. Kevin's eyes widened. It had been less than 2 minutes since he entered the room, but he'd already been shocked more than 3 times. What other surprises did Vice President Shepard have in store for him?
"I suppose he's still too young and all his inner thoughts still show on his face,"
Harley Shepard thought to himself as he shook his head a few times. Then he smiled and said,
"Come with me. I'll take you to see the dean."
Kevin didn't understand what Shepard meant, but this was definitely not the time to ask questions. He could only follow the vice president obediently. Penny's phone suddenly rang at her party mansion in the suburbs. "Mackenzie sent me a message saying that Kevin has already gone to the campus to find the vice president and the dean. Maybe the call is for Grandpa Knott," Penny said quietly. She had a very solemn look on her face. "Didn't I say it just now? Kevin definitely won't give up on your grandpa. Hasn't he already gone to look for him?" Brenda patted Mackenzie's back and comforted her gently. "Don't worry about it." Before Mackenzie could reply, one of her other good sisters spoke. "But the school campus is heavily guarded. I'm sure Kevin won't be able to save him alone." That was definitely their main worry. There were lots of experts at the Healing Arts School. On top of that, Wayne Ford and Harley Shepard were 2 top experts, so there was no need to worry about Kevin facing the challenge alone. Even if all the leaders of the 10 schools showed up at the same time, they wouldn't dare try anything reckless. "Just hang on. I'll go and find Kevin right away." Mackenzie stood up from the sofa feeling really positive. "Penny, send a message to Kevin right away and tell him to wait for me at school." "Mackenzie, I can understand your feelings, but what's the use of dashing over there so rashly?" Penny said with a slight frown. "I think it's better to stop Kevin from rushing right in. Instead, we should immediately inform headquarters to send experts over there. Then everyone can discuss the situation and make a better decision." "No, that would be too much of a delay.
Although Grandpa's really trained a lot over the years and he's pretty powerful, he's still old. I just can't bear to let him suffer at the hands of those evil villains from the 10 schools. Mackenzie stubbornly put on her shoes and ran out of the mansion. No one could stop her. Penny, what should we do? Brenda and her other friends were worried about Mackenzie's safety and were getting flustered. We can only take one step at a time, Penny sighed as she sent a message to Kevin. She couldn't think of any good ideas at a time like this. She could only place her hopes in Kevin. Meanwhile, a beautiful woman was running along the beach at Chicago's lakefront. Her face was full of anxiety. Kelly Emmett panicked while she searched everywhere. She was worried that Ariana would really kill Kevin. When she looked to her side, she was stunned by what she saw and hurriedly covered her mouth with her hand. She didn't let herself make any sound. Someone was lying on the beach and the water was splashing up against their body. Other than her mentor, who else could this person be? Ariana! Kelly shouted loudly as she hurriedly ran over to pick her up from the ground. How are you? Who hurt you like this? Please wake up. You're scaring me. Kelly was already panicking deep down in her heart. Ariana was the closest person to Kelly in the whole organization. Even though she was strict, she'd always been very good to her. Feeling that Ariana was still breathing, Kelly hurriedly took out her phone and called for help. Don't be afraid. I'll get you to the hospital right away. Kevin was sitting near the flower bed at the entrance of the Healing Arts School playing with his phone. A white BMW suddenly stopped in front of him. The tires squealed as the car came to a halt. Finally here? Kevin remarked as he put away his phone and slowly raised his head. Mackenzie didn't answer his question. She bit her lower lip as she looked down at the ground. What are you doing here? Kevin asked with a frown. Why didn't Penny come here herself? She's the one who sent me the message. Do you know where my grandfather is locked up? Mackenzie had no idea how to talk to Kevin. In the past, her attitude towards him had always been very unfriendly. Not only was she always belittling him, but she also swore a lot. Is this the kind of attitude you have when you ask someone for help? Kevin laughed out loud in surprise. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm ashamed of all those things I said to you in the past. Is it too late to apologize to you now? Mackenzie seemed to be throwing caution in the wind. No way, Mackenzie. Is this what you call an apology? Kevin couldn't figure her out. Don't you like my attitude? After a short pause, Mackenzie quickly recovered her emotions and explained herself. Kevin, I understand that you're used to being considered a useless good-for-nothing. This got you a little messed up, so you can't accept other people being nice to you. Isn't that true? So you only feel comfortable when someone's swearing at you and insulting you. Kevin looked at Mackenzie and was absolutely speechless. He really wanted to pry open this woman's brain to see what was inside. How could he possibly respond to what she just said? Seeing that Kevin wasn't speaking, Mackenzie thought that she had said the right thing. Kevin, don't worry. I'll definitely help you keep your secret. Bullshit. You must be some kind of psychopath. Kevin clenched his fist tightly and his breathing started to get heavier. Then what do you want? Mackenzie asked doubtfully. Don't do anything you'll regret later. Mackenzie, you're so full of crap. Kevin couldn't believe how angry he was with her. Just then they heard a whiny voice. Oh, is it really Kevin? Got nothing better to do? Hearing that, the two of them turned around and saw Mike getting out of a car with his two buddies, Luther and Lionel. What are you doing on campus during vacation? Kevin asked, puzzled. It's none of your business what I'm doing here. I haven't asked you what you came here for. Mike glared at him. I can't believe you're still alive after suffering such a serious injury. Are you a cockroach or something? Suddenly, Mike and his two brothers looked at Mackenzie.
Hey, Kevin. I didn't know you were having so much fun. You just recovered from your injury and you're already going on dates?
The corner of Luther's mouth was starting to drool. No wonder you're spending your vacation on campus. A little extracurricular activity? Lionel leered at Mackenzie as he looked her up and down. For a loser, you've got pretty good taste.
But anyone who would hang out with you can't be that great, Kevin,
Mike said disdainfully. Mackenzie kept taking deep breaths as she listened to the three of them. She was about to lose control of herself and vent her anger on them. She couldn't remember ever having to put up with this kind of humiliation. If she wasn't in front of the school, Mackenzie would definitely leave the three of them bleeding on the sidewalk. Kevin could feel that something wasn't right with Mackenzie. He suddenly reached out and put his arm around her waist. "What's wrong with you guys? Are you annoyed that I'm alive and well?" Kevin gave them a fake smile. "One more thing, it's none of your business what kind of woman I hang around with. And watch what you say in front of my sister." "You..." Mike wanted to say something witty, but he was speechless. "Why don't you tell them what a good brother I am, sis?" Kevin said proudly. Mackenzie was so furious that she wanted to slap the hell out of Kevin. But she couldn't do anything right then. She wasn't a student at the school. And if she wanted to save her grandfather, she would most likely have to rely on Kevin. "Good. You're a good brother," Mackenzie said softly as her face started to turn red. "No, your voice is too soft. These three handsome men didn't hear you." Kevin deliberately raised his voice. "Okay, big brother. Let's head inside. We still have a lot of things to do today." Mackenzie gritted her teeth as she forced herself to sound pleasant. "Okay, sis. We'll head inside now. The dean and the vice president are still waiting for us." Kevin put his arm around Mackenzie's waist. When he passed by Mike, he even deliberately bumped into him. After that, he smugly walked up the steps to go inside the building. He didn't care what Mike thought or what he might do in retaliation.